What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the massive Warzone update is just 1 week away where we're going to be seeing the Vanguard integration as well as the brand new map Caldera. And just recently we had that blog post talking about a bunch of the changes and things that we can expect to see with this, as well as a nice overview of the map. However, there are still a handful of very important unanswered questions that I just wanted to bring up and talk about today. Partially just to let you guys know that there still is no official answer to this because I'm getting asked about it constantly myself. And then also partially just to continue the discussion here and hopefully push for some more information and answers to be coming. And diving right in, the number one most important question that I've been seeing floating around the community, not just in the past week, but this has actually been asked for well over a year now. This is an FOV slider for console. Will we be getting one with the Pacific update? This wasn't confirmed in the blog post, it wasn't even mentioned in the blog post. However, we did have one of the developers acknowledge the FOV slider on console, but unfortunately not give us any sort of a concrete answer, so we're just left to speculation on this. So when asked about whether or not there'd be an FOV slider for console, Ted Timmons, who's a creative director at Raven, says, "We're definitely aware of this, especially that I speak as a console player. Thing is, if I tweet literally anything, then it will become a headline, which wouldn't be fair to me or the team. I just hope that these patch notes make it clear you are being heard and we are listening." So like I said, unfortunately, that doesn't quite answer our questions, and we are left to speculate on this. Now, of course, I don't blame the guy. He is definitely not allowed to answer that question. But the impression that I'm getting out of this is that we probably aren't seeing that FOV slider come with the Warzone Pacific update. If it were coming, I feel like it's something that they would be proudly advertising. It would have been featured in the blog post. It definitely would have been something they'd be talking about at this point. And yet there's really been no official mention of this. And therefore, the impression that I personally get out of this tweet is that they are still working on a console FOV slider, but we shouldn't necessarily expect it to come with the Pacific update. Now, I am hoping I'm completely wrong with this speculation, and we're just going to be surprised next week, and we're going to have that FOV slider on console, but I wouldn't get your hopes up, and I wouldn't hold your breath, because it doesn't seem likely. So there we have it, that's the first big unanswered question when it comes to the Warzone Pacific updates. However, there's another really big one that is also fairly important. I guess it doesn't really change the gameplay at all, but it is still an important question to be asking. And this is, what client is Warzone going to be running on? Is it still going to be booted up through Modern Warfare? Or are we now going to be booting it up through Vanguard? Or are we going to be booting it up on its own separate client? Is it now going to be its own game called Warzone that you download separately? Personally, I'm really hoping they at least branch away from the Modern Warfare client so I can get rid of that game forever and never have to boot that up again. And I think the ideal situation would be to have Warzone as its own separate client that you download 100% separately from the other games. But again, this is one of those unanswered questions. We don't know what client we have to boot up in order to play Warzone once the Pacific update arrives. Now, another big unanswered question that kind of relates to the previous one is, which mechanics are we going to be seeing when it comes to the Warzone Pacific gameplay? Are the mechanics going to be basically exactly the same as they are now in Warzone, so the movement and everything's going to feel the same? Or are we moving into more of the Vanguard style mechanics where we have that tactical sprint delay, for instance, that slows people down from constantly slide canceling all over the place and gaining that tac sprint back more effectively? Additionally, how is the weapon integration going to be happening when it comes to those Vanguard weapons? How many of the stats can we expect to be changing? Are we going to be getting larger magazine capacities compared to what we're seeing in multiplayer? Kind of like what they did with many of the guns for Cold War. Are all the damage values going to be completely reworked? Is the recoil going to be the same? We really don't know what's going to be happening here. I wanted to make a video actually talking about like which guns I feel you should be focusing on leveling up in Vanguard's multiplayer in order to prepare for the integration. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized we have no idea how these guns are going to perform in Warzone compared to multiplayer. They might feel like completely different weapons, and therefore it's really hard to know like what's going to be good in Warzone. We really don't have a clue there. And another thing is, are we going to be seeing any perks or equipment from Vanguard, or are we just sticking with the same equipment and perks that we've had in Warzone since the beginning, essentially? I know they did mention in the blog post that they were nerfing some of the equipment, like heartbeat sensors and stun grenades, for instance, so that does seem to imply that they're going to be sticking with the existing equipment in Warzone, but are they going to be adding any from Vanguard? Also, going off of that, with the Vanguard Royale modes that are going to be coming next week that limit you to only using Vanguard weapons, Are you also going to be limited in your equipment choice? Are you going to be able to bring a heartbeat sensor into that World War II setting where it was actually confirmed that this is going to be set in 1944? Or are we only going to have access to the World War II style equipment from Vanguard? Again, these are unanswered questions. We don't know what's going to be happening for sure when this specific update drops. And finally, there's another fairly big question that is unanswered at this point, and I don't expect this to be answered right away. This is something I'm hoping to hear more about down the road. This is there going to be a future of a proper ranked playlist for Warzone going forward? I know they've been playing around with Iron Trials for a little while now, and that was clearly designed to be a more highly competitive mode that was fine-tuned for more competitive play. And it seemed to be sort of the testing bed for the potential of a ranked playlist in the future. So that's a huge question that I have here. Can we expect to see a ranked mode in Warzone going forward? Because I feel like this is going to be very important for the longevity of Warzone. Otherwise, for many people, it's just going to get stale again once the initial hype of the new map dies down. And with that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. These are the biggest unanswered questions that we have so far. Obviously, a bunch of them we're just going to find out next week once we get our hands on the game and we can just see for ourselves. Or perhaps we're going to have another blog post that will be diving into more detail with some of these aspects, like potentially an FOV slider. At this point, I still think that's the biggest thing that I'm really hoping to see. I want to see a much more level playing field when it comes to the gameplay of Warzone. And as it is right now, I just think the discrepancy between console players and PC players is far too high, and one of the biggest reasons for this is that FOV slider. Now, of course, these are just the big questions that I've been seeing. I am curious to hear from you guys in the comment section below. Do you have any other questions that haven't been answered yet that you'd like to see some confirmation on for this upcoming update? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.